Life has a funny way of settling into a rhythm, doesn't it? Especially when you've been with someone for as long as Daniel and I have. Years melt into decades, and you find a comfortable groove, a familiar routine that's easy to slip into. We had that. A good life, a comfortable home, and a love that, while maybe not as fiery as it once was, felt solid and dependable. Daniel's always been a good man, steady, kind, and he still makes me laugh, which, after all this time, is saying something. And then there's Lucas. Now, Lucas is a different kind of energy altogether. He's Daniel's best friend, been in our lives for what feels like forever, but he's also my employee. I run a small interior design business, and Lucas is my right-hand man, the creative spark that often brings my visions to life. We've always had a great dynamic, the three of us. Lucas is at our place all the time, for dinner, for game nights, just hanging out. He's like family, the fun uncle who always has a good story or a witty remark. I genuinely enjoy his company, and I know Daniel does too. It was easy, but lately I'd started picking up on these little things, fleeting moments that made me pause, made me wonder if I was just imagining things. A lingering touch from Daniel on Lucas's arm, a shared glance across the room that seemed to hold a conversation all its own, a comfortable silence between them that felt different from the comfortable silence I shared with either of them individually. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a faint hum beneath the surface of our everyday life. I remember one evening, Daniel and I were in bed, just winding down. We'd had a nice enough evening, a quiet dinner, a movie. He pulled me close, and for a moment, it was like those early days, that effortless connection. But then my mind drifted. For no real reason, I thought of Lucas. Maybe it was something he'd said earlier that day, a joke that had made me laugh. I don't know. Just then, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A notification popped up. A new post from Lucas on that social media app he's always on. I picked it up, half expecting some silly meme. Instead, it was a candid shot of him, laughing, his head thrown back, looking genuinely happy and, I have to admit, effortlessly handsome. The kind of photo that just captures someone's spirit. I smiled, a genuine smile, and without thinking, I turned the phone towards Daniel, who was still lying beside me, half asleep. "Look at Lucas," I said softly. "He looks like he's having a good time." Daniel chuckled, barely opening his eyes. He glanced at the photo, and then back at me, a small smile playing on his lips. "Yeah, Lucas always knows how to enjoy himself." And then he said something that, in the moment, seemed perfectly normal. But later, it kept replaying in my head. "You've always thought he was a good-looking guy, haven't you?" It wasn't accusatory, not at all. It was said with a casualness that should have put me at ease. But something about the way he said it, the almost knowing tone in his voice, just stuck with me. "He's all right," I said, maybe a little too quickly, and scrolled past the photo. But the seed had been planted. That tiny comment, coupled with those other little moments I'd been noticing, started to take root in my mind. I lay there in the dark, listening to Daniel's steady breathing, and I thought about our years together, about my friendship with Lucas. Had I been blind to something? Was there something going on beneath the surface that I hadn't seen? I tried to dismiss it, to tell myself I was just being silly, reading too much into things. But that feeling, that subtle unease, it just wouldn't go away. It was like a tiny pebble in my shoe, something small but persistent, a nagging feeling that something in our comfortable rhythm might be about to change. After that night, I found myself watching them more closely. It was like a switch had flipped in my brain, and suddenly all those little moments I'd previously brushed off seemed significant. The way Daniel would instinctively turn to Lucas when someone told a joke, the almost imperceptible brush of their hands when they passed each other in the hallway, the way they seemed to anticipate each other's thoughts. It was like they had their own private language, a silent understanding that excluded me. One Saturday afternoon, we were all in the backyard, Daniel and Lucas tinkering with the grill, me reading a book in a lounge chair. I looked up and saw them standing side by side, their heads bent close together as they discussed something. Daniel's hand rested on Lucas's shoulder for a moment, a gesture that could have been just friendly, but the way they were both leaning in, the intensity in their expressions, it felt different. It lingered in my mind long after they'd moved on to other tasks. The unease grew, a knot tightening in my stomach. I tried to rationalize it, to tell myself that I was being paranoid, that years of friendship naturally created a deep bond. But the feeling persisted, a nagging whisper in the back of my mind that something wasn't right. Then came the day I decided to check the security camera footage. It was a completely impulsive decision. I'd been meaning to review the recordings from the front porch because we were expecting a package, but somehow my fingers just strayed. I found myself clicking on the recording from the living room from a few nights prior, the night after Daniel's comment about Lucas being good-looking. I sat there on the couch, my laptop on my lap, the image on the screen showing an empty living room at first. Then, a few minutes in, Daniel walked into the frame, followed by Lucas. They were talking, their voices muted on the recording, but their body language spoke volumes. They stood close, facing each other, and then Lucas reached out and gently touched Daniel's arm. Daniel didn't pull away. In fact, he seemed to lean into the touch. My breath caught in my throat. I watched, frozen, as the interaction unfolded. It wasn't overtly sexual, not in the slightest. But there was an undeniable intimacy, a tenderness in their movements, in the way they looked at each other. Lucas's hand lingered on Daniel's arm, and then he reached up and adjusted the collar of Daniel's shirt, a small, caring gesture that felt deeply personal. The scene played out for a few more minutes, just the two of them talking quietly, their closeness palpable. Then Lucas leaned in, and it looked like he whispered something in Daniel's ear. Daniel smiled, a soft, genuine smile that I hadn't seen in a while. I closed my laptop, my hands trembling slightly. The reality of what I had just witnessed settled over me, heavy and undeniable. It wasn't just my imagination. There was something going on between Daniel and Lucas, something more than just friendship. My initial reaction wasn't what I expected. There was shock, of course, a sense of disbelief, but there wasn't the immediate fiery rage that I'd always imagined I'd feel if something like this ever happened. Instead, there was a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching a scene from a movie, and beneath that, a flicker of something else, something akin to curiosity. It was a confusing jumble of emotions, and I didn't quite know how to process it. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, replaying the security footage in my mind. I thought about Daniel, about Lucas, about our life together. Everything felt different now, viewed through this new lens of suspicion and revelation. That evening, as Daniel and I were getting ready for dinner, I made a decision. I needed to see them together, in person, knowing what I knew. I needed to observe their dynamic up close, to see if I could understand what was happening. "Hey," I said casually, as I was setting the table. "Why don't we invite Lucas over for dinner tomorrow night? It feels like it's been a while since we've all hung out." Daniel looked up, surprised. "Oh, sure. That sounds good." He didn't seem to suspect anything, which both relieved and slightly unnerved me. I picked up my phone and sent Lucas a text. "Hey, you free for dinner at our place tomorrow night? Just the three of us." His reply came almost immediately. Sounds great, Avery. What can I bring? Just yourself, I texted back, a strange mix of apprehension and anticipation swirling within me. The stage was set. I had no idea what tomorrow night would bring, but I knew I needed to see it through. I needed to understand the truth, whatever it might be. The next evening felt charged from the moment Lucas walked through the door. There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, at least for me. I was hyper-aware of every glance, every touch, every shared smile between Daniel and Lucas. To the casual observer, it might have seemed like just another friendly dinner, but for me, knowing what I knew, each interaction carried a different weight. We started with drinks in the living room. Lucas was his usual charming self, telling stories about a recent project at work, making us both laugh. Daniel seemed relaxed, maybe even a little more animated than usual. I played my part, laughing at the appropriate moments, asking questions, trying to appear completely normal. But inside, my mind was racing, analyzing every nuance of their behavior. When we moved to the dining room, I strategically placed myself across from both of them, wanting a clear view of their interactions. As we ate, the conversation flowed easily enough, but I noticed the small, almost unconscious ways they connected. Daniel's knee would occasionally brush against Lucas's under the table, a seemingly accidental touch that neither of them acknowledged. Lucas would often direct his comments and questions more towards Daniel, even when I was the one who had initiated the topic. Then came the moment that really struck me. Lucas was recounting a funny anecdote about a client, and Daniel leaned forward, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he listened intently. When Lucas finished, Daniel leaned in close, his lips just inches from Lucas's ear, and whispered something. I couldn't hear the words, but whatever he said made Lucas throw his head back and laugh, a genuine, unrestrained laugh that resonated through the room. It was the kind of laugh I used to elicit from him, a sound that held a certain intimacy, and hearing it directed at Daniel, in that way, sent a strange mix of jealousy and a morbid fascination through me. The rest of the dinner continued in a similar vein. There were no blatant displays of affection, no overt signals that would have been obvious to anyone else. But for me, the subtle cues were all there, painting a picture of a connection that went far beyond platonic friendship. After we finished eating, as I was clearing the table, I announced, "You know what? I just remembered I need to run out for a quick errand. I completely forgot to pick something up earlier." Daniel looked surprised. "Now? It's getting late." "It won't take long," I said, forcing a casual smile. "I'll be back in an hour or so. You two can keep each other company." Lucas offered to come with me, but I waved him off. No, it's something I need to do on my own. You guys just relax." I grabbed my purse and keys, gave Daniel a quick kiss on the cheek, and headed out the door. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw them standing in the doorway, watching me go. I knew what was likely to happen the moment I was out of sight. I didn't actually have an errand to run. I drove around for about 45 minutes, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. There was a part of me that wanted to just keep driving, to escape the inevitable. But there was another, stronger part that needed to know, needed to see it through. So I turned the car around and headed back home. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the living room lights were off, but there was a soft glow coming from the bedroom window. Daniel rarely turned off the living room lights completely. My heart started to pound in my chest, a strange mix of dread and anticipation. I parked the car quietly and slipped back into the house. The front door was unlocked, as Daniel often forgot to lock it when he thought he was alone. The house was quiet, but not silent. I could hear soft, muffled sounds coming from down the hallway, faint but unmistakable. I moved slowly, deliberately, each step on the wooden floorboards seeming to echo in the stillness. I reached the bedroom door, and just as before, it wasn't fully closed. There was a sliver of an opening, just enough to offer a glimpse inside. I pushed the door open gently, and there they were, Daniel and Lucas, tangled together on our bed, just as I had known they would be. Daniel's hands were on Lucas's back, his head bent low. Lucas's head was tipped back, his lips slightly parted. Their movements were slow, almost languid, lost in a moment that felt both intimate and urgent, a moment they clearly thought was private. They didn't see me at first. I stood there for a moment just watching, a strange sense of calm washing over me. Then Lucas shifted slightly and his eyes flickered open, landing on me. A breath hitched in his throat, and his body stiffened. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes widening in shock. But they didn't stop. They couldn't. The moment stretched between us, thick and charged. I wanted them to feel it, to understand that I wasn't here to break things apart, not in the way they probably expected. Finally, a small, knowing smile touched my lips. "You should have invited me," I said softly, my voice calm and even. Their eyes stayed locked on mine, a mixture of shock, surprise, and something else. Maybe even a flicker of relief. The tension in the room was palpable, thick with unspoken anticipation. I didn't hesitate. My fingers found the hem of my dress, and I lifted it slowly over my head. The fabric slipped away, drifting silently to the floor. The air in the room seemed to shift, charged and humming with something undeniable. I took a step forward, closing the space between us. My fingertips brushed Lucas's jaw, the lightest of touches. His breath hitched, and his lips parted slightly as I tilted his face towards mine. Our movements felt effortless, instinctive. And then I kissed him, softly at first, a slow tease of warmth, a question met with a quiet shiver, an answer whispered in the way he melted against me. The moment deepened, the initial hesitation fading as his hands rose to my waist, pressing me closer. His touch was hesitant yet wanting more. Behind me, I felt Daniel. His presence lingered, steady and warm, a quiet force watching, waiting, knowing. Then his fingertips traced a slow path down my back, feather-light at first, then more deliberate. The heat of his breath touched my shoulder, lingering before his lips followed, his touch unhurried and intent, clear in the way his hands settled on my waist, grounding me between them. A slow tremor rippled through me, caught between the softness of Lucas's kiss and the steady, knowing pressure of Daniel's hands. My fingers explored the contours of Lucas's skin, learning him, memorizing him, feeling the way he responded beneath my touch, the way his breath hitched, the way every slight shift carried a silent meaning. I kissed him deeper, savoring the moment, teasing, drawn in by the way he pressed into me. How effortlessly we seemed to fit together in that moment. Then I let my lips wander, tracing the curve of his jaw, the column of his throat, lingering over the pulse that fluttered beneath my mouth. I took my time, reveling in every subtle reaction, every small sound caught between breath and need. His fingers tangled in my hair, holding me there, his touch both uncertain and unyielding. Behind me, Daniel moved, always there, always present. His hands discovered, searched, found each place where sensation deepened into something more. His lips followed, pressing warmth into my skin, each slow movement sending a spark down my spine. We were caught in it, tangled together in that space where thought dissolved, where only sensation and connection remained. Everything built slowly, deliberately, winding tighter with each shared breath, each touch, each lingering moment stretched impossibly thin. And then the tension broke, a rush, an undeniable pull swallowing us whole, a wave crashing over us, leaving nothing but breathless stillness in its wake. The world faded away, leaving only warmth, only them, only the sound of our unsteady breaths filling the space between us. I exhaled, sinking into it, into them, into everything that had just unraveled and reformed between us. There was no second-guessing, no hesitation, just them, just us, just this. Most men dream about this, but if it happened to you, would you take the chance? Be honest. If you walked in on this moment, would you stop it or just watch? Maybe even join? I want to know. Tell me in the comments what's your move. And before you go, don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe. It's free, takes just a second, and ensures you never miss the next story. Turn on the notification bell too. You won't want to be late for what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.